Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Punt Intended podcast, a Dynasty fantasy basketball podcast and a Sports Ethos production presented by FanDuel. As always, I am your host, Mark C., the Dynasty leader over at Sports Ethos. On today's episode, we're going to finish up our discussion of the recent mock draft we hosted here at Sports Ethos, along with two special guests, Braxton and Andrew of Angle Fantasy Basketball. So we're going to get three brains discussing a slew of picks and a slew of players. What were their approaches to this mock draft? How did they approach it? Why did they select the players they did, rather? You'll get all those insights and more. But first, a little housekeeping. You can find me on Blue Sky at Mark C Sports Ethos and on Twitter at MacAttack145. My Dynasty writings and rankings can be found at sportsethos.com, You'll get access to all those writings, all those rankings with an NBA Fantasy Pass subscription, and should be published already. If not soon, there'll be my write-up on this mock draft, what picks I found interesting, what were my favorite picks of each round, and some of my thought processes on my picks. So be sure to go check that out. Without further ado, let's bring in Braxton and Andrew here. Braxton, how you doing?
Awesome. Excited to talk about it's mock draft season, kind of at this dull point in the maybe dull is the wrong word, but maybe lull in the fantasy season. So I'm really excited to talk about this mock. This one was a blast.
Andrew, are you feeling the same way?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us in the mock. And of course, thank you for having us on today's episode. Really excited to talk about our teams.
I'm excited too. Before we get into the actual draft and the players, I first wanted to discuss with y'all what was y'all's approach to entering this startup draft? I'll give a rehash of the settings again. This is a 12-team, 18-round mock draft with 10 starters, 6 bench, and then 2 IR slots and 2 minor slots. So it's a bit more heavier to the starters, but you're still starting roughly 120 players across the league. Braxton, what was your approach to this startup?
Yeah, so obviously the first thing I noticed was, as you mentioned, kind of the heavy amount of starters versus bench. I don't play in a ton of, and I would call this maybe a shallower league just in terms of the amount of teams. I don't play in a ton of the leagues like that, but I did notice that this one, the settings for this seem to be a little bit different than maybe your typical 12-team settings. So kind of factor that into account, and I liked it because it allowed. I think the more players you start, the better. I think in shallower leagues, when you're rostering, for example, maybe 20 players, but you're only starting, 8 of them or 7 of them. And that's maybe an extreme example, but the parity in the league really isn't there, or like maybe some really interesting lower end, top 150, top 200 guys really aren't that relevant in leagues that size. So that's something I took into account and was excited to see, or rather, be able to make picks for guys in that range that would still be relevant on those teams. And again, also in a league this size, even though the amount of starters allows you to take some bigger swings, and Mark, we were just talking about this off pod, with that league depth, allows you to maybe take some picks earlier than you normally would in a deeper league. Just because you're allowed to kind of backfill that production with guys who fall for the same reason, right? People kind of just taking bigger swings, grabbing their guys earlier. So those are all kind of things I'm factoring in as I'm going in here. And also in a league this size, definitely can go for like a distinct build. Usually in deeper leagues, you're kind of just going for, overall production, especially in deeper category leagues. You don't really have the luxury to have, a build, right? But in a league this size, definitely something you can look at, and definitely something I factored in here as well.
Yeah, I think all you said there is just a good reminder to know your league settings when you're entering a league. It may seem really minor and really like, no duh, Mark, I'm going to look at my league settings, but actually look at your league settings, know the ins and outs and the little tricks, or know like, hey, starters are a little bit more. So maybe I'm okay taking some gambles, but I need to make sure I have that production depth available to myself. So just look at all those factors. Make sure you analyze that before you actually go into your startup draft. Something that can be easily overlooked, but something that's a good reminder. Andrew, how do you approach this startup draft? What was your do you have any general strategies, or were you just kind of going with the same general philosophy as in any Dynasty startup mock?
Yeah, so I love Braxton's point about generally teams in a shallower league like this are going to have a specific kind of build, whereas in the deeper ones, you're more so just going for as much volume minutes as you can, because it's a little bit harder to put a build together in a deeper league. So in a league like this, it gives you a lot more control over the exact same kind of stat sets that you want. In addition to that, for a shallower league like this, I'll usually lean more to drafting competitive players, throughout majority of the first beginning rounds. I don't usually get guys that are in like their late 30s, but really have no issue grabbing guys between that age window of like 27 to 32, guys in their athletic prime. So I did a lot of that in this draft. And the main reason why I do that is because when you're in a league this shallow, in a 12-team league, if you keep your first every single year, you get a lottery pick every single year, whether if you become first place in the standings when you finish or if you're last place. Regardless, you get a lottery pick. So not to say you'll jump up to number one in the odds, but you're still getting a really good crack at a potentially good rotation or even, second, third scoring option, potentially even a star level player if you still finish first and pick last at 12th overall in the first round. So with that in mind, knowing that there's always going to be a constant influx of rookies, it allowed me to focus more on competitive players now. That's, of course, the goal of playing fantasy and Dynasty is winning the league and winning the prize money. So I went for a lot of that. I still, of course, mixed in some young guys here and there, but definitely leaning more to that competitive window to compete now, especially also with the large slot availability that we have for starting players, leaning even more into that because you can't just go, 6 competitive guys, then a bunch of young guys and expect to win a 12-team league like this one. So that was my approach.
I really like the point you made there, Andrew, about the first round pick, because in a bigger league, maybe you're thinking that, hey, it's the end of the first round is a real lotto ticket. But in a 12-team, literally if you were in the back end, 10th, 11th, 12th, you are getting a lottery prospect ticket there. And sure, those players aren't going to be the same caliber as your true blue chippers at the top of the draft, but there still are a talent that could easily, you can see him, I think, easily elevate to someone who can impact your team's production rather than just being a nice depth piece that maybe is the case in a larger league size. So I really like that point. Let's go ahead and share the draft now and just get into the actual picks here. There we go. And a reminder, we are on YouTube. So we are sharing the draft on YouTube here. So if you're watching, make sure you go hit that like button. Really simple. Just tap your screen, hit that like button. Done. Easy. If you're on audio, subscribe, rate, review. That sort of stuff really does help the growth of the podcast. Braxton, you picked 8. Andrew, you picked 9th here. I actually want to start with Andrew here. And I think going a bit with that comment you made about leaning towards a specific build or that competitive window, you went with Giannis Antetokounmpo at 9th overall. Was this a part of a targeted strategy at 9, or was that just the best talent that you thought was available to you?
So my answer to that is actually both. So I wanted to go for more of a build specific strategy in this draft. Some guy who was, very rich production in specific categories. In addition to that, in regards to our Dynasty ranks, which is an average list produced by the combination of myself, Braxton, and our colleague Mitchell's rankings, I'm the highest on Giannis out of our 3. I'm higher on Giannis than consensus. He's actually number 6 in my Dynasty ranks currently, so right behind Cade and then Cooper Flagg. And it's just the overall production. I think he's an underrated asset in terms of Dynasty. The only player in the NBA last year to average over 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. He's only 30 years old right now. He's still one of the best players on the planet. So it just drives me crazy that literally one category can sometimes scare people away from Giannis, which is that free throw percentage. But in a context like this one, where I'm much more planning to have a molded build in the first place, and being so high on Giannis that I am, I felt this was great value for me at number 9 here. This is someone who can produce, top 3 numbers in the right build, which is, as you'll see, what I tried to do to complement Giannis the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting as we basically follow your draft, seeing how you drafted players that complement Giannis. Let's go to Braxton at 8 here. And, Andrew said Giannis was his 6th ranked player. Braxton, that seems to indicate that Andrew thinks you made a mistake at 8 going with Jalen Williams. You need to defend your pick here?
No, I would be lying if I said I didn't consider Giannis there if Jalen Williams was not available. Similar to Andrew, though, I believe I'm the highest on Jalen Williams out of the three. And I don't have the ranks up in front of me, but I believe he's my 6th highest or 7th highest ranked player with this latest update we did about a month ago. And, I'm just a big fan of guys who can do it all, especially out of the forward spot. The assists out of the forward slot are just and center slot, as you'll see kind of later on in the draft too, are just too much for me to resist. And Jalen Williams really allows, and this is why I kind of harped on, really being able to craft a build allows you to go in any direction moving forward in the subsequent rounds. And just kind of the ideal player to build a team around. Like if you took like Trae Young or something, for example, at that pick, you're really kind of shoehorned into something specific. Giannis would be the same way. Chet Holmgren, who went after Jalen Williams and Giannis, is another one. I think Chet Holmgren is perpetually overvalued in dynasty drafts. Yes, his 9 category ranking is super high. And I know the question wasn't about Chet, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think the ranking is super high, and his impact versus his 9 category value is just not there. So, I'll take somebody like Jalen Williams, who I perceive to have a higher floor, even if his 9 category ranking isn't going to exceed somebody like Chet Holmgren, just because, if he goes down or somebody that complements him goes down, you're able to almost replace that production more easier. Maybe not in the sense of who's available on the wire, but exactly what you need to fill, right? If you have an efficiency build with threes, blocks and field goal percentage or something, the way you would with Chet, right? If Chet goes down, everything kind of crumbles. And that's not really the case with Jalen Williams. And if you surround him with the right guys, it's something that I think can't be beat. And I know this kind of turned into the hate on Chet segment, but I just think Jalen Williams was a no-brainer there for me.
Yeah, and I think both the approaches are very fair here. Jalen Williams, as you said, like if you look at his stats here, what is he bad in? He's not bad in anything, right? Getting 21 and a half points a game, 5 boards, 5 assists, about a steal and a half, some blocks, nearly 2 threes a game. That's all just very steady production. It's not targeted, but it allows you to have so much flexibility in whatever value falls to you in the following rounds. But then, Andrews with a targeted approach with Giannis, as well as being his highest ranked dynasty player there, it doesn't mean that other players' talent is higher, but they're higher for your own team, which means your build just gets powered up. So I think both approaches are very fair, especially in a league this size. Let's move to round 2 then. And let's look at where Braxton followed up that pick with Jalen Williams. You went Scotty Barnes at pick 17.
Yeah, not to be dramatic, I literally cannot think of a better player to put next to Jalen Williams. So, this is what I was saying. If he goes down, Scotty Williams is almost an identical kind of player in terms of fantasy production to Jalen Williams. He's got that little bit of everything, right? And with the bonus of blocks, there could be an argument for Scotty Barnes to go 8th overall in this startup draft. And I was beyond stoked to get him in the 2nd round. And just the way that he complements Jalen Williams' skill set, you're really hammering every single category. And again, I maintain, by having this as my 2nd pick, I maintain that flexibility in the 3rd and 4th in subsequent rounds to go any direction I want. I can pad assists if I want. I can pad big man stats if I want and still be competitive in assists. I can, maybe pivot and go threes. What I'm looking for in drafts like this is to have just as much flexibility as possible as I go throughout. If I really force myself into, okay, I'm going to have this build, and I know I just said something similar, but if I really am okay, I'm going to have this build, you might find yourself reaching for players that may not be, deserving of that draft position as you get deeper into the draft because you need to complement them in a very specific way, right? So, yes, I'm going for a build, right? But as of two picks in, I still haven't decided what that is yet. Is the build good at everything? I know that's not really a build, right? But that's kind of where these first 2 picks are. And as I continue to go deeper down, it allows me to maintain that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think what I like about these first 2 picks, it's not just that the stat sets are well balanced and I think in that way complement each other well, or I guess supplement might be the better word there. It's that this age profile too fits up so nicely where but Jalen Williams is 24-25. Scotty Barnes is also 24-25. Still right before pre-prime production fantasy seasons. So you still have flexibility there as well. So, I mean, those first two picks just ooze flexibility while still hitting players that are appropriate talents at their level. It's not like you're overdrafting for youth or flexibility. These are just the ranges these players are in. So I love that pairing. Let's move to Andrew, who went with Karl Anthony Towns at pick 16 here in round 2. Was this seen as just a good fit next to Giannis here?
It definitely was. I know probably majority of the Dynasty community would have preferred Scotty Barnes instead of Towns because Brax picked right after me and he got Barnes. And that was the other player that I was in close contention with. They're right next to each other in our Dynasty ranks. And it came down to Towns being a better complement to Giannis overall. Towns is another one of those guys where he's within an age window that I'm comfortable with. He's only 29 years old at the moment. And the main part of what I was looking more at is, for starters, the field goal percentage. Towns is a very strong field goal percentage, whereas Scotty Barnes is a little bit more wild than I would like for somebody to pair with Giannis right now. I know the free throw percentage of Scotty fits with Giannis, but by taking Towns, not only does it give me flexibility by adding in a good free throw shooter, now perhaps I have an avenue to pad free throws with good free throw shooters and basically alleviate the problem of Giannis as a free throw shooter. In addition to that, Towns is also a better three-point shooter than Scotty as well. So that also adds the avenue to potentially add threes into my build here. And then we, of course, have the points and heavy rebounding to complement what Giannis already does. And then something I love to do, grabbing my centers early, getting my centers early so I don't have to worry about it in round 6 or 7 when the quality of the options drop off a bit. So we're also keeping assists in play here by getting a center who's a great passer, 3 assists per game for Cat, and then over 6 assists per game for Giannis. So once we add in some point guards down the road, we're going to be looking at a pretty strong build here. So Towns just gives me so much more flexibility with the direction I want to go in at the expense of him being a little bit older, but he is also currently a better 9-cat producer than Scotty right now. He's coming off I think a top 7 or at least top 10 season last year with New York. I know Tibbs being gone worries us a little bit. Maybe that 35 minutes per game goes down a little bit towards 33, something along those lines. But even if it does, I still really like this fit for Towns, especially with how strong his rebounding has gotten in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about the non-Tom Thibodeau being there, but you answered that, and I kind of agree with you. We may see slightly less. We probably do see less minutes and slightly less production. I don't think it's a crazy amount less. It's obviously less, but there's still plenty of room for Towns to produce well and produce impactfully. And, at surface level, yeah, Towns and Giannis may seem like a weird pairing, but I think for the reasons you laid out, it makes a lot of sense. And you're really hammering home those big man stats early and getting not just those big man stats, but bigs who also produce elsewhere, which is super valuable. I think I do love those bigs that produce elsewhere. And you further hammered home that theme here in round 3 with Anthony Davis at pick 33. Oh, is this just good value for you getting that elite production and leading into this? All right, I'm going for this, prime production window contention right here.
Absolutely. Not only is he a great fit, but this is just value-wise. This is something that I had to do. I believe Anthony Davis should be valued somewhere around the 20s in startup drafts for Dynasty, maybe like between like 23 to 28. So getting him slightly outside the 30s right here feels like plus value for me. I like him more than other names on the board like Garland, Jaylen Brown, James Harden, Kevin Durant, because he is going to produce those, top 10 numbers like a Harden, like a KD, but he's got a few more years on his side in regards to career longevity. The defensive output of Davis is what really complements Giannis here too, because Cat's not really a great defensive guy, but AD absolutely is. So we get that. And then now my team has 3 of the best rebounders in the league, in addition to 3 centers. So this is at the point now where I don't really have to worry about rebounding or big man stats for quite a while moving forward here. Also, this is another center that leaves the avenue of assists open for me. AD is another 3+ assists per game center, and then another field goal percentage anchor for me to complement the rest of my build as well. So I know his free throw percentage is slightly below 80, so that's not going to be a huge help with propping up what Giannis is going to do on the free throw end, but everything else, especially the defense, is just something I couldn't pass on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're saying defense wins championships.
It does.
Which, I mean, hey, this is a pretty competitive build right from the top, or a competitive team with those first 3 picks. Braxton, at pick 32 here in round 3, you went a slightly different direction than Andrew, but I think consistent with your theme of your draft in going with Dylan Harper, the 2nd overall pick from this recent draft.
Yeah. One pick before me, Mark, actually was you with Sabonis, and I was pretty locked in on Sabonis at this pick. He was in consideration for me in the 2nd round, actually. I think maybe us 3 here are some of the biggest Sabonis fans you'll find, who find him. He warrants something probably in the top 15 in redraft and dynasty leagues, and I don't think a lot of people would agree with that. But so I was pretty locked in on Sabonis. Didn't happen that way, and I decided to pivot with Dylan Harper. It's kind of outside of my norm. I typically don't lean youth in startups. But
I was pretty surprised you went with Harper there for that reason. I was like, man, Braxton's going the rookie here.
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't super enamored with some of the other guys on the board. I mean, I'd considered AD, but there's not. And this is kind of the point you brought up earlier. With the league depth this size, I felt confident enough to be able to kind of on the back end be able to replace any production I'd be missing in year 1 with or from Dylan Harper in the subsequent rounds. So this was more of not really necessarily his fit next to Jalen Williams and Scotty Barnes, but more so pure value. Knew he wouldn't be there on the 2nd pick, and I was pretty confident I would get whoever my 2nd or 3rd option would be at this pick at my next one, just because I wasn't a biggest fan of anyone else left here. So just from a pure value standpoint, I grabbed Harper.
Yeah, and I think this is where I have Harper in this range in my rankings, and so it's not like you reach for him or anything. You just took him at what you saw was good value, it sounds like, and I think that's always a pretty wise decision in your startup drafts. Let's look at your next picks, Braxton, here in round 4. Going with Miles Turner at 41.
Yeah, so Turner was, and this is why I mentioned a second ago, Turner was definitely in consideration with that 3rd pick for me. Felt it was a little bit too early for him. Not a lot of blocks left on the board. I wasn't a big fan of Bam. Bam did go before Turner, so it's not like I had an opportunity for him at that 4th spot. But Alex Sarr, you'll see, is a couple picks later. If I wanted to go full youth movement, probably would have went him. But I think Turner is the better play right now and in the next couple of years as well. And from a category standpoint, just because that field goal percentage is not there from Sarr, I think we see maybe a little bit of boost for Miles Turner as that 2nd option in Milwaukee now. It's really just Giannis and Miles Turner. And we might see career numbers from Turner this year in terms of scoring. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, just because of how much they paid him and how excited they are. They waived Damian Lillard, obviously, to get him on that team. So, I'm particularly excited about Turner. Obviously, from the center standpoint, they're kind of drying up at this point, the elite ones, that is. So, wanted to kind of secure that as well. And grabbing Turner from a block standpoint allows me to compete with the teams that are more elite in blocks, like maybe Andrew's team or the team that took Chet. I forget who took Chet earlier in the draft. But, it allows me to kind of stay at that upper echelon of teams there while still being competitive in, again, literally everything else. So Turner just kind of seamlessly fit in there for me.
I think that's a good point about your blocks too, because Turner's been a pretty consistent, at least 2 blocks a game. And we've drafted Jalen Williams and Scotty Barnes earlier. There are no slouches in blocks either. So you're getting a little bit of that supplemental blocks in, enough to at least say, hey, I can at least compete on most weeks, unless the team is just stacked in blocks, which, hey, if they're that stacked in blocks, they're probably lacking in other areas where then your well-balanced roster can easily compete. So I like that selection. And I think, Turner's maybe not the flashiest guy. He's kind of seemed like the same guy for 7 seasons now. Doesn't mean he's bad, just because it's like bread. Bread's still good. It's Might be old or roaring, but it's still good. I'm a bread person, so I'm getting way out there.
No, bread is fantastic. I think if Miles Turner turns out to be the bread of the NBA, I think that's a win for him. And I think, like I said, I truly think he's in for a career year this year. I don't know if he's ever had this opportunity and this much confidence in him, right? He's played with Sabonis earlier in his career. He's been relegated to kind of a catch and shoot guy in his later tenure in Indiana. And, Milwaukee seems to have so much confidence in him. And I don't think 20 points per game is outside the realm of him.
For sure. Andrew, the pick before Braxton's at pick 40, you went with Desmond Bane, who, is in Orlando. Are you worried at all about a drop-off in his production, or you think he's just going to be the consistent producer that we're used to?
Not really worried at all. He was pretty much the third option in Memphis behind Ja Morant and behind Jaren Jackson Jr. He's not somebody who needs a ton of usage to be effective. So being that I picked right before Braxton, Turner was a potential option for me, but I already have 3 centers, 2 of them strong at blocking, and it just felt like a little bit of overkill to go with Turner. So round 4 kind of represented my pivot towards grabbing some guard stats because I want assists to still be in play here. And I want to pad up my steals a bit here too, because I don't really have any steal specialists yet. Desmond Bane isn't necessarily a steal specialist, but I do like the 1.2 steals per game, the scoring as well as a complement to my first 3 guys who are great, over 20 point per game scorers. And the fact that his field goal percentage isn't going to really put a big dent in what I'm going for so far. He's a very efficient shooter, and this keeps 3-pointers in play for me as well. So Giannis and AD are not great 3-point shooters, but Cat and Desmond Bane absolutely are good 3-point shooters. The assist is also something that I wanted. And then just, for both his size and his wingspan, the 6 rebounds per game is what I consider to be some strong out of position rebounds for someone who's normally labeled as like a shooting guard or a small forward. So, just a very complimentary skill set. I think potentially he might even be better in Orlando. Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero have a lot of gravity to them. They're going to be attacking the rim quite a bit. The defense is going to be collapsing to deal with that. And we're just going to have Desmond Bane roaming the perimeter with a lot more open shots for himself, most likely, due to being in this Orlando offense where he will at least be the focal point of their 3-point attack. So pretty happy to get Bane here. I know I reached maybe a handful of picks. Maybe he's closer to like 45 value, but I wanted to get a guard stat set type of player who really fits what I'm going for here.
I personally don't see much fall from Bane. I'm with you there. So I don't even see this as a reach. I saw this as a really just strong value pick in play. With your next pick in round 5, pick 57, Andrew, you decided to secure the whole Magic backcourt by adding Jalen Suggs. Do you think his stat set suffers at all with these new players? I guess new player being Bane in the fold, or is this just a good adding threes and steals and some assists to the fold?
Yes, to that stat set. And also, I was at the point where I was like, all right, let's get somebody on the younger side here. Let's get somebody who's younger than 25 years old. Because I have gone somewhat of the older route, especially with my first 3 picks. I took 3 guys in their 30s. Well, Towns is 29. Bane's a little bit on the younger side. I think he's like 26 or 27. But I wanted somebody under 25 years old. I wanted a stud around that age range. And Jalen Suggs was the perfect answer to that. I was looking in the market for a steal specialist here at this point in the draft. So Suggs is somebody who helps fit that for me. And I wanted his assists as well. So I know the shooting percentages, at least from the field, isn't really a huge help. I do like that he's a great free throw shooter. This is addition to something I forgot to mention with Bane also being a great free throw shooter. And they both have pretty good volume at the line as well. So these are 2 other guys that can help prop up that free throw percentage that might be hit a little bit by Giannis, maybe a tiny bit by AD, and will be helped out by Cat as well. So complementing just some of those guard stats, Jalen Suggs, the assists, the steals, and he does have some good out of position blocks for a guard. I think he's at like 0.7 or 0.6 blocks per game. So we get close to 1 block per game there. That's some good value to help complement, everybody else. Oh, 0.9 last year. Okay. Yeah. So
that's
pretty helpful player here in the stocks department with some assists. And then he's a good scorer as well. So another, above 15 point per game scorer to help me out.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. And just getting that guard too, that's going to help you with the stats you're trying to. I think that's just a good pick in this range. Braxton, the pick before at pick 56, you went with Stephen Curry, which felt a little against the grain of your draft, but I thought it was excellent value. But explain to me, I guess, what you were thinking going with Stephen Curry, who is 36, 37 now.
Yeah, I mean, no, this is exactly what I was talking about. Taking Dylan Harper in round 3 allotted for me to, kind of hunt for this value in round 5. Whatever production Stephen Curry brings for the next 2-3 years is, while Dylan Harper is kind of waiting in the wings, kind of offsets whatever production loss I have from taking Dylan Harper in round 3. So this was fully, okay, I'm going to take Dylan Harper, but I'm still going to be the best team in the league type pick, right? So taking Curry here, really boot. And this is kind of where I'm trying to, craft more of a build at this point, with the build being, I'm going to dominate you in every single category because I took the 2 guys at the top of the draft who are good in every category, followed by guys who beef up maybe the harder ones to find. And then Steph Curry in the elite 3-pointers and free throw percentage, albeit on low volume, I know, but the assists there as well. I just think he complements Jalen Williams and Scottie Barnes so well, bringing in the high volume scoring, the high volume threes, and which is where, Scottie might lack, or Jalen Williams may not in the scoring department, right? But they're not the best 3-point shooters, or at least don't make as many threes as you would like from this ideal perfect player, right? So Curry is just replacing that production, like I said, missed out on from Dylan Harper, and that's exactly what I went for. I try not to lean too much in one direction in any draft. Whether I'm not going to take all guys over 35, but at the same time, I'm not going to take all young guys. I've got a constant flow of youth and talent in all of my dynasty teams, and I think that's the best way to go about it.
I don't even know what a draft would look like if you pick only players above 35. If that would like qualify.
You probably do good for half a season. You probably get or something. You could do okay.
Yeah, you could. The 1 year win and leave it method.
Yeah.
All right, let's see where you went with your next pick, Braxton. Here in round 6, pick 65. Then you just added a nice, old, reliable center in Jared Allen. Is that just how you view him? Basically, a nice, steady, old, reliable center.
100%, and also it doesn't have the impact on free throw percentage that maybe some of the other guys will. I mean, we saw Zubats and some like Donovan Clingan go a few picks before this. Mark Williams, not the biggest fan of Williams in Phoenix after what they paid to get him, so wasn't really in consideration there for me. But Jared Allen, like you said, kind of all reliable. This is me just kind of padding those big man stats. The blocks did dip below 1 last year. So not the best block source, but, he does have that kind of traditional big man skill set without the downfalls that maybe you would expect from a player with that skill set. So really just kind of rounding out the top of my team here. Again, going for, I'm going to beat you in every single category every week, which is not going to happen, I know. But just kind of covering myself on all bases here with this Jared Allen pick.
I mean, I don't have much more to add. I mean, I think fantasy fans and fantasy players would like to see, hashtag Mobley Unleashed and Jared Allen moved elsewhere. And Jared Allen is still a very good center in his own right. I think adds a lot just on the court too, with some of his passing game too. He's approached 3 assists in the past. It's not great assists, but it's something. And I think he sometimes gets a little disrespected for that, but I still view him as just a very solid center. Andrew, you went with the aforementioned Mark Williams at 64. Braxton seemed to be a little more down on him, but tell me why you might be higher on him then.
He's just down on him because he's not on the Hornets anymore.
He's healthy. He's not injured.
So Mark Williams, this is the last center I grabbed for a while. I wanted another young guy to add to the team. With Mark too, I like the free throw percentage that he provides. You would think with a center like Mark Williams, it's probably, he probably shoots around 60% from the line. But no, he shoots actually pretty close to 80% from the line. So I love to see that. In addition to this with Mark Williams, this is one thing you and I talked about, Mark, on a recent pod I was on with you. We're not completely sold on Kaman Malawach having a really big role right away with Phoenix. Like, we're not really sold on that, 20 plus minute per game backup role, or like a direct center minute split between Mark Williams and Kaman Malawach being the first thing that happens in Cleveland. We think Malawach is a little bit more raw than some people are kind of anticipating for this season coming in. So I think, Phoenix is going to use Mark Williams as more of a stopgap center, maybe these first 2 seasons in Phoenix right here, as Kaman Malach, learns more about the game. He is somebody who didn't start playing basketball until a lot later on in his life than most of his counterparts in the league here. So it might not be very, exactly like Charlotte numbers, but I think the drop-off for Mark Williams in Phoenix is not going to be as big as it was in Charlotte. In addition to that, I think he will be surrounded by more complementary players throughout the year more, because there was some, injuries that would happen in Charlotte, some of the main playmakers, whereas, there should be more availability from Devin Booker, from Jalen Green, even guys like, Grayson Allen, some other ones in Phoenix are going to be able to help play make for Mark Williams and help him, really shine in the role that he's going to be in there. So I'm not expecting too big of a drop off with him in Phoenix.
I mean, it sounds like you're saying Braxton, Charlotte Hornets just aren't as good of a team and
Yeah.
aren't as good of players as
I might be
Phoenix
saying that.
Andrew, are you saying the Hornets don't have any ball handlers outside of LaMelo Ball? Is that true?
Okay, well, they do now, not last year.
It's backup point guard has been a major issue for them for.
You got it now, though. The front court's good now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got Colin Sexton. Everything's solid.
Yeah. They went overkill on the front court, if anything.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we have to keep in mind Mark Williams was producing well in 26 and a half minutes per game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do we really think that he's not going to get that in Phoenix? Definitely year one, I think he's getting that, or at least approaching it, if not more. I think it's more likely he gets more than under. So if he does well.
I think he just sits right at about 26. The amount of capital that they moved for him, what was it, 28th overall or something like that, just straight up, was not I wasn't super the highest on it for him and his long-term outlook. By the way, I think it's so funny they have the Lakers listed on the Fantrax team.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's crazy. 0 games played, 0 games started.
But Nick Richards is still there, and Andrew, I think that's somebody you forgot to mention there.
I remember Nick Richards.
I don't think Malach is going to have much of a role at all year one, and I think not that Nick Richards is some kind of world beater or anything, but I think he's going to be on the floor unless they trade him. I mean, he's one of the few guys they have left that are on the tradable contract. Also, Iguodaro is still there as well, who isn't really playing any 5 minutes, but he's kind of a weird tweener, and they seem to like him, so he might steal some minutes. Like, I don't know, there's just kind of a weird situation. And I guess my thought is that Williams won't get prioritized maybe the way that he would in Charlotte, in Phoenix. Not to say that maybe his production might drop off, but I'm thinking maybe 2 years from now he's not really going to be a core piece of this Phoenix team, is my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the scenario you outlined will happen, but I also wouldn't be shocked or say it's crazy if it does happen.
Which one? With Richard playing or Malach not playing?
No. Richard's playing. I think the scenario where Williams isn't prioritized, I think he will get prioritized, but I also wouldn't be shocked or surprised if he does just hover at 24, 25 minutes a game. I wouldn't be completely surprised either. It's not crazy. I'm saying you're not crazy, Braxton. It's a compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, let's move to round 7 here. Round 7. Braxton, you went with another rookie from this draft at pick 80, and Ace Bailey.
Yeah, so this is
total flip Braxton move from what he normally does, getting these rookies.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Getting a little weird for me. We saw Colin Murray Boyles go, I think, a full Mark, if you could scroll up, what was it, a full round or full round?
In round 6 at pick 71. So you got Ace Bailey at round 7, pick 80.
So that kind of triggered this for me. So, we saw Harper, Flag, and Edgecombe go kind of where you would expect them. Harper, mid-30s, Edgecombe kind of early 40s. But Murray Boyles going at 71 was like, hold on a minute. Are all these rookies getting taken super early? And I look, and again, at this point, I'm looking at production, but Ace Bailey and by the way, I want to be clear. I picked Ace Bailey because I thought he would get picked before Con Knippel. I'm actually higher on Con Knippel, and I know we're about to get to that in a second. But I was like, somebody's going to take Ace Bailey here, and I just thought his skill set, again, complemented Scotty Barnes and Jalen Williams super well with kind of those stocks out of the guard forward eligibility slot. So again, this was another one where the value was just too nice to pass up, and really thought I could fill that in the subsequent rounds. And I think I was effective in doing that, as maybe we'll dive into a little bit further. But yeah, I don't know. I looked at it and I'm like, I got to take Ace Bailey here. I can't take Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby. The value is too good. So
yeah, or you can't take Jordan Poole either, right? Obviously.
Well, yeah, Jordan Poole obviously can't take Jordan Poole. I think that might be one of the worst picks in the 80s, in the early 80s. But yeah, I don't know. Ace Bailey, I don't know. Just too early, or excuse me, too much to pass up there. And I grabbed him because I thought he would have gone way earlier.
I mean, I won't profess to be the biggest Ace Bailey fan, but
I'm not either.
If you believe in him and you see it, then yeah, and he'll have opportunity. Plus the guard/forward eligibility, which I do think he'll retain because he'll play. I think he'll play enough too, or guard some of these jumbo Jazz lineups where he retains that guard eligibility, is a nice little bonus there.
Absolutely.
Andrew, you went with what Braxton called one of the worst pick in the 80s. Obviously joking, but you went with Jordan Poole here at 81. What do you think of Jordan Poole's prospects, not only in New Orleans, but long-term? I think that's the questions for a lot of dynasty managers right now.
The long-term one might still be a little bit up in the air, but at least for the short term in New Orleans, he's got a pretty wide open role for him with DeJounte not being there. And we still probably got maybe minimum 2 years till Jeremiah Fears fully arrives. And I don't think any of us are really expecting Jordan Hawkins to be a threat to him. So it's Jordan Poole and Jose Alvarado right now. And this was much more of a value grab than a fit grab. Jordan Poole is currently Braxton's 64th ranked dynasty player. So we do consider him to be a top 60 guy. That's where he's at right now in our ranks. So he slid a little bit too much for my liking. So I know he's not the best fit. This is just more somebody who I think slipped a little bit too far. He does help out with the free throw percentage, with the threes, with the scoring, a little bit of assists. The field goal percentage might be a bit of a deterrent here, but I haven't really gotten any shot chuckers yet. This Poole's probably one of my only ones. Maybe there's one more. So that shouldn't be too big of an issue for me, especially with such heavy volume, high field goal scorers like Giannis, AD, and Cat. So the other complementary pieces of Poole's game for the build are able to shine a bit more for me. I like the age range that he's in. And yeah, there's just not too many threats to him in New Orleans at this current time. If Jeremiah Fears really shows out, then maybe, 2-3 years down the line, then yeah, it's Fears' team. And perhaps Poole gets traded again. Maybe Poole's one of these guys who gets traded quite a bit in his NBA career. We'll see how that goes. This is his second trade so far, but love the value for him there at 81 overall.
Oh yeah, I mean, some may say, Jordan Poole, he's, not worthy of seeing the role he is. Not fully on that train, and I agree. I think it's just a good value pick at this range. I'm always a fan of grabbing good value when you see it in dynasty startups, because, I mean, unless you really just win a trade very heavily, I feel like dynasty startups are like the one place you can actually get the most value up on your league mates. And so you got to take advantage of that. You got to take advantage of that when you see the chances, even if the fit doesn't feel that clean. Let's move to round 8 here. Andrew, you snagged Bilal Coulibaly at pick 88. What do you think of his prospects in Washington on this very young, heavy Washington team?
I think he's still got a longer leash than people realize. I think he's still got maybe 2 more years to prove that he's going to be one of the main pieces of Washington. Not to say he's going to be their primary scorer or anything, but he still has time to prove that he belongs in their starting 5, for a long period moving forward. And I believe in Bilal Coulibaly. I have him as a top 75 asset. So this was a little bit of a value grab for me. And this draft also happened well prior to Bilal being hurt. This actually happened, I think, pretty prior to Eurobasket even happening in the first place. So at that point, the injury was not there. So maybe he's going to slip a little bit in some other startup drafts that happened after that injury took place. But with Bilal, I also, wanted to start padding the steals category again. And Bilal is going to help out a ton with that. Does a little bit of rebounding, a little bit of passing, and is, right now one of the probably better scoring options for Washington. I know they don't have a ton of scoring juice right now. They pretty much just have like CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, and then it's the rest of the young guys: Alex Sarg, Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George, Corey Kispert. Soon to be Trey Johnson as well. Just the overall fit for the defense mostly is what I'm going for. It provides a little bit of blocks on his side as well, and just a nice young player that I have a good amount of dynasty stock in, and he is now, on my roster so far that we've talked about, the youngest player on here.
I think all those points make sense. And I mean, yeah, he suffered the injury later, but I don't think it's going to affect him too much in the long term, if at all. And
yeah, he might only miss like 3 games or something like that. Yeah.
Which, like, in Dynasty is nothing. Like, if you're worried about a player missing 3 games beginning of the season, then I wouldn't even worry about that in redraft, let alone Dynasty. So.
Right.
Let's go to Braxton at pick 89, selecting Christian Brown, who I would say, is that one of your favorite players, Braxton? I feel like you just love players of this mold.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I don't think I can be any louder about Christian Brown this offseason. I think I finally turned Andrew around on him, and I think you thought he broke out. Well, actually, let me take a step back. I've been sounding the alarm on Christian Brown for like 3 years now. It was always like, where is the fantasy skill set going to come from? We saw it this past year. I think he can take another leap. I think the assists are going to be his next leap. I think they can tick up to 4. We saw him at 2.5 last year. Played 33, or I guess rounded up to 34 minutes per game. His field goal percentage was absurd for someone that was shooting the way that he was. He's like an Aaron Gordon with free throw out of this world at 82 or 83. Let's just round up all the numbers. But the Nuggets don't have a backup point guard. It's Jalen Pickett, I guess, who is not good, and Bruce Brown, if you want to call him a point guard. Somebody's going to have to handle the ball that's not Jokic, right? And I think the changes that Denver made this offseason directly complement. Okay, let me back up. I said that's not Jokic. Jamal Murray, obviously, is going to be the number 2 outfielder, right? But somebody else needs to handle the ball, okay? Russell Westbrook is gone. He's not coming back. Michael Porter Jr. was a black hole on offense. They replaced him with Cam Johnson. I don't think Cam Johnson's going to be taking nearly as many shots as Michael Porter Jr. was. In steps Christian Brown. I think there's going to be more shots available for him. I think those assists ticking up by 1.5 is very reasonable. Again, I think he's going to kind of be the de facto backup point guard. So this is going to be a huge value pick. I wouldn't be surprised if Christian Brown has a top 50 season this year, just with how good his skill set is. And again, he complements those guys I took earlier in the draft so well with, he's got no immediate downsides in any category. Even the assists at 2.5 are pretty solid for someone with his kind of skill set. The turnovers I think are going to stay pretty low too. So he's not going to hurt you literally anywhere. And Mark, I think you nailed it. He's probably one of my favorite fantasy players. He does everything so well. And he's a great real life player too. So I think this is going to be a huge value pick looking back on it.
Yeah, I mean, if Brown can up that on-ball usage and creation, it would be a pretty big boon to his fantasy value, giving him, I think, more of a pillar, not just being, nice, reliable across the board, but actually giving some oomph in some of these categories. Let's go to round 9 now. Andrew, you kind of went with a Brown-like player, I think that's fair to say, and Toumani Camara, kind of a nice, steady player across the board here at pick 105. I mean, could we just copy and paste Braxton's analysis on Brown here for Toumani Camara?
I mean, they're a little bit different. They're a little bit different in their athletic profiles, but yeah, what they do from a fantasy perspective is fairly similar. So, like I mentioned with my Mark Williams pick, was going to be the last center I was going to take for a while. I was feeling very comfortable in my big man stats. So, for quite a few picks after that Mark Williams, when I was focusing much more on guard stats as well as locking down the steals category. And Toumani Camara, of course, is an excellent complement to the steals category, 1.5 per game. A little bit of other, stat stuffing qualities, some rebounds, some assists from him, some decent scoring too, and 3-point production. So I think really the only reason why I got Toumani Camara is because the Hornets prized new pick, Colin Kneppel, was there for Braxton at 104. Otherwise, this conversation would be had with Braxton right now because Mark, I don't know if you know this. You're currently on a podcast with the president and vice president of the Toumani Camara fan club. So If it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be him. We're both very, very big Toumani Camara fans. So just love what he does overall. I think he'll be a staple in Portland moving forward.
Well, I mean, Braxton passed on Toumani Camara at 140, 104, and instead picked Con Knipple, showing maybe some of that Hornets favoritism.
That's why he's vice president.
I don't think it is favoritism because
I'm joking. I think this is a great value here.
I took Ace Bailey and I'm like, okay, I'm good on rookies. And then I'm watching the picks go by and I take Brown at 89. I have to take Brown at 89, right? And then I'm watching the picks go by and I'm like, okay, he's still there. And it gets to 104 and I was pretty locked in on Camara. And I'm like, this is crazy. Con Knipple outside the top 100. I have him above Ace Bailey. I only took Ace Bailey because, I was convinced that he would go earlier, right? So my original thought was to take Brown where I took Bailey 2 rounds prior to this and then go Con Knipple the round after, right? But I'm like, you know what? I think I can chance this. Take Bailey here. I can go Brown the next one. And then I guess I'll miss out on Knipple. Just kind of the way it shook out is very in the moment, right? And I don't know. He made it. So I don't know. I'm used to playing with people who maybe overvalue youth, but this is quite undervalued, I think, from a youth perspective. We saw some guys go earlier. I know you took Nikola Topic around prior, Mark. Not that that's a bad pick, but I'm not sure that I'd have Topic, in the top 5 in a redraft right now. So I don't know. I was just too easy or too hard to pass up, I should say. Camara would have been.
You can slam me if you want, Braxton. It's okay.
No, I don't want to slam you. I think it was another one similar to what I was kind of doing with Bailey and Knipple was you kind of backfill that production. I think that was kind of what you were thinking there. And it worked out for the people, I think, that went that direction in this draft because this was definitely a little bit of an unorthodox draft, I would say. And I want to say we were in on Toumani before it was cool. Okay, that's why we have the fan club. Anybody is allowed to join now if you want to join, but we are massive Camara fans, and it really pained me not to pick him at that pick. And Andrew, I think you did it because I took Knipple, if I'm remembering correctly, in an angry fit of rage. So not to say that it's not a good pick there, but I would say they're probably tied or for both of us at both those slots.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you were trying to map out your draft picks, I think that is something to do in your draft. Try to know your league, and you can sometimes game out the picks a little bit and anticipate maybe this play will be there. But the way you talked about it invoked the who's Pepe Silva from It's Always Sunny. You have your little board and connecting all the dots with Fred String and such. But I mean, that's something that maybe sounds next level crazy, but that is also something to do in your dynasty startups too.
Honestly, Mark, I'm so glad you said that. That's kind of how I view myself during drafts. So there's probably way too much thinking going into it, but it paid off in this case. So
No, you can never think enough. But let's get to we're getting to round 10 here, and we still got round 10s through 18. So we'll pick up the pace a little bit on these players. Next round you went. I just realized you drafted another rookie, your 4th rookie, in Trey Johnson at pick 113, Braxton.
Yeah, I told Andrew as I was making this pick, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy. I never go this direction. And this is another one where I was like, okay, Derek Queen went before Trey Johnson. Like, this is insane. And I'm not even big on Trey Johnson, right? Like, I'm not the biggest Trey Johnson guy, but at this point, you got to take him. I mean, like, it just doesn't make sense to me with some of the guys that are going in this range. And, with some of the guys that are going in this range, just reinforces my thought process that I'll be able to make up this value later in the draft because at this point in the draft, we're kind of getting a feel for, what kind of players are going to be available in the later rounds. Oh, there's going to be some serious production here. So that really influenced this one as well. And allowed me to the luxury, I should say, of making that pick, right? If I need to, I can literally stash those 4 rookies on my bench and, have the Steph Currys of the world and other players kind of make up for any lost production in those first few years, like I mentioned with the Steph Curry pick. So there's another one. It was just I don't know. In the moment, I'm like, this is not me, but it's just too hard to pass up.
Yeah, you stole a lot of words from my write-up there, Braxton, because I wrote, like, this is the range, in the hundreds, I feel like, where production really starts flattening some. So you can afford to maybe take some rookies here, take what you see as these higher prospects, and you can still get your Cameron Johnson, Rudy Gobert's, Nikola Vucevic's, Paul George's. You can get these players later, not see as much of a talent drop-off, and make sure you secure some of these rookies now, or just prospects in general, which is what Andrew did here at pick 112, picking up Jaden Ivey. I feel like Jaden Ivey's been a little out of sight, out of mind because of his injury. Andrew, what do you think of your pick here at Jaden Ivey, 112 here?
100% agree with that, Mark. A little out of sight, little out of mind here for Jaden Ivey, especially because Detroit still did so well without him. And they were adamant that they probably would have gone around further in playoffs if they had Jaden Ivey's services. This is a former top 5 pick. And right now, Ivey's valued right around where I got him, like right in this top 100 outskirts. But if he begins next season the same way he finished off last season prior to his injury, I think we'll see him bump in within the top 100 value-wise for dynasty leagues. He's still so young, and the shooting improvement last season was so big. I know we didn't have a very big sample size of it. What was it? Yeah, 30 games exactly. So we would have liked to see that shooting sustained, but going up 7% in his three-point percentage from 33 to 40, as well as the field goal percentage ticking up about 3% from 43 to 46. Those are huge helps to the stat set of Ivey. And then I wanted a good score here for this pick. So with my last 4 picks prior to this, Mark Williams, Jordan Poole, Bilal Coulibaly, and Toumani Camara. Aside from Jordan Poole, the other 3 guys aren't the strongest producers in points per game. So I wanted to pad that down a little bit here with Jaden Ivey, add some more exciting young talent. And this is, could end up very well being a value grab for me. I know this is kind of where he's valued at the moment, but if he goes in the next season still as a better shooter and still as one of the focal points of the Detroit offense, then this is probably going to end up being a steal here at 112.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the shooting improvement. When I did my rankings update in the summer, I looked at him and I was like, this is better than I thought. So I feel like he is a little out of sight, out of mind. Don't forget about Jaden Ivey, and they seem to really like him in Detroit. Let's move to now round 11 and round 12 here. Braxton, we're going to tackle your next 2 picks together here. Rudy Gobert at 128, Daniel Gafford at 137. Just taking 2 productive centers, it feels like here, just to kind of help that area of your squad.
Yeah, and I think my previous comments kind of explain these 2 picks, right? I take the rookies there, and then I've got to fill that production in somewhere. Gobert fell because of his age. Gafford fell for who knows why. I guess he's because he's the 3rd center on that team. But that contract, is something. They didn't give him that contract for no reason, right? So not that I'd take him top 100, but at 137, that's just too hard to pass up. The centers of their caliber at this point in the draft, too hard to pass up on. I know I keep saying that for every pick, but I really just felt like with literally every single pick, I'm like, this is crazy value. And it's just because the way that the draft shook out. It was a pretty unusual draft, and allotted I think all 3 of us to make, maybe some picks that we didn't anticipate making. So really pleased with these 2. Maybe a little bit overkill on the big man stats at this point with a couple of my other picks, but you can always trade some center stats. So
for sure. Now, Andrew, you took, I would say, probably maybe one of the best values in the draft here with Anthony Simons at 129, and then Santi Aldama, I think another just solid selection there at 136. Was Simons a player that you thought you would draft, or you just saw him dropping and it's like, I gotta pick him up here? This is way too far of a drop.
Yeah, I definitely think he slid a little bit too much. And, prior to his new situation, I never really was very interested in Simons in Portland, especially once they got Scoot Henderson. I was like, all right, they're going to fade him out eventually. And they technically did by moving him, but they sent him to a team that could really use his services. So I, for one, am definitely attracted to the allure of Anthony Simons in Boston this year. Braxton and I did a more in-depth discussion on his role this year as part of this Patreon series we do called Player of the Month. He was the first one that we covered. So I think he should be valued, kind of like Jaden Ivey, right in the outskirts of the top 100. But at least for this year specifically, this is a candidate to put up, well above top 100 value on a weaker Boston team kind of going through a reset year. So perhaps they're going to see what they have in Simons to either sign him for the future or send him to a contender, around the deadline or something like that. But just the allure of what's going to happen up until that point, or if he gets kept in Boston all year, if they decide, hey, we can use this guy moving forward, he's still young, he fits with the core, so let's just keep him the whole year, especially if Boston gets to a point where they start nosediving even harder into a tank, let's say February onwards, and we might see some insane production from Anthony Simons on that end. So loved him, and especially his age range, getting him here. I know he's also not an amazing fit stat-wise for what I'm going for, but it's more so the value play. I think it'll be a little bit more enhanced of what we potentially saw in Portland. And then for my next pick, Santi Aldama. So I think this is more bang on with his value. This isn't as much of a value play, but this is another center who does a little bit of everything for me. He's not one of those super strong rebounders like the other centers that I got, but he is a great passer. He can shoot. And another reason why I'm really high on Santi in both Dynasty and Redraft is due to the absences of Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. to begin the year. Mm-hmm. So, I'm looking at him as 4 to 5 weeks of starting out really hot out the gate. A lot of usage, more usage than he's normally going to get throughout the rest of the year because that backcourt depth for Memphis is really thinned out right now. And then once Jaren Jackson and Zach Edey return, he'll go down more to his baseline level, which is still some totally acceptable stats to have in a build like this one. But I'm really interested in what's going to happen for at least those first 4 to 5 weeks here for Santi.
I was a big Santi Aldama fan. It was like year 2 in the season, year 3 on that Ravage Memphis roster. Kind of took a little bit of a decline. And I wasn't sure if that was more skill-based, I overrated his skills, or if it was more he took on too much of a load than he should have. Seemed like last season it was more too much of a load that he's accustomed to. And then we just saw him produce pretty nicely across the board. So I'm excited to see what he can do this season as well. Let's go down now to rounds 13, 14, and 15 here. And let's get all y'all's picks here. And move to Braxton. Braxton, you took, I would say, another one of your favorites in Keyshawn George at pick 152. At pick, I got to scroll up a little bit here. No, I don't. I guess can't find you. 152, Keyshawn George. 161, Draymond Green. And then Norman Powell at 176. I feel like all these players are kind of some of your guys that I've seen you talk about these players in so many various outlets before.
Mark, you know me so well.
What was that, Braxton? Sorry.
I said, you know me so well. I'm so high on George. This was insane to me for him to fall to 152. We Andrew, I believe both you and I have him around 100, like in the range of.
He's like right on the outskirts.
So seeing him fall this far, and again, me and Andrew might be the highest on Keyshawn George than that you'll find. But, maybe we're pioneering the fan club. I know some people are in on him. Some people don't think maybe he has that long-term role. But some of those steals and blocks games last year were just unbelievable. He's Matisse Thybulle with an offensive game. And, I think he's going to continue to play that role. I think Washington's going to continue to prioritize him. And he's just kind of got that little bit of everything. I mean, even the assists at 2.5, that's not nothing, right? That's substantive, whatever. It's something. It's something worth mentioning at this point in the draft. And I'm not worried about that field goal percentage at all. The volume was not too high enough, and I've got enough good field goal percentage elsewhere. Draymond is another one. I felt like at this point I really needed to hammer assists. Didn't like the the guard options available. So went ahead and hammered Draymond. Also the steals and blocks, self-explanatory. I think he just complements some of those guys that I took early in the draft super well. And then Norman Powell, I was a little bit worried about scoring at that point. Obviously, Norman Powell, I was low on him in Los Angeles going into this year. I was worried about that his season or last year was carried on efficiency and a little bit of an unusual health season for him. But I really like his role in Miami. I don't think Miami's going to be very good, but I think Norm is going to get a ton of touches, really as much as he wants. So that's why I grabbed Norm there.
I'm with you on Norman Powell. Like, I think on Clippers, I agree. I would have felt a little queasy on him, but it's more was the shot volume plus the regression. Now I feel like that shot volume is going to be there in Miami because who do they really have in that room to score? I love Tyler Hero. I like Bam Adebayo, but who else is there? And it's not like Bam is really a huge – I think his self-creation game and scoring gets somewhat overrated and just assumed to be good when it's more of
volume.
Yeah, volume driven. That's a nicer way to put it than I was thinking in my head. So I think Norman Powell is a very nice option here, especially if you're looking at points here in the 170s. I mean, you're getting a nice 20-point per game score probably there, and I think that was great value there. Andrew, you went a little younger, at least at the beginning of this round. Actually, really throughout this round, going with Noah Esenge at 153. Yves Missi at 160, and then just getting a nice veteran in Aaron Gordon at 177. Talk to me about some of these picks here.
So always keeping league settings in mind. This league does have 2 minor spots that we can have kind of what we consider more some stash guys to put in there. So I decided to use one of those spots in this round here with Noah Esenge. So I plan to stash him in minors throughout the year if this were a real league that we were playing forward with, of course. I like Noah Esenge's outlook. I think, 153 is pretty spot on to the value of where he'll be at in most dynasty ranks right now. It's more so probably Mitchell who sold me a bit more on Esenge, but I do like the landing spot in Chicago for him. So that's a fun stash to have right there. Yves Missi. So this is, one further stat padding the center spot. Yves Missi is somebody I really liked last year, still do like, of course. Getting another young guy here, and then just some backup at this center position because I do, of course, have Anthony Davis, who's a little injury prone. So, this is, of course, right outside the top 10 players because this is a start 10 league. So now we're kind of talking about our benches here. And Yves Missi is someone who's going to really step in for me and provide those rebounds and blocks if somebody like an AD goes down. And then, just love the age. I know that New Orleans did get a little bit more crowded in the front court, but Derek Queen is currently hurt, so Missi does have some time still to work with here. So that was a pretty easy pick for me there. And then Aaron Gordon, this is more so just a great compliment to the team that I'm currently putting together. He is a free throw anchor, a great scorer, a good passer. Say that again?
I think you mean field goal anchor, not free throw anchor, right?
Oh, my bad. I meant field goal anchor. Yes, not a free throw anchor.
He shot 81% last year. He is going.
That is a notable improvement from what he's normally done.
To not think it was that high, I thought it was more this lower.
Yeah, no, it's normally been more around 70. Okay, so field goal anchor. Jesus, thank you, Brax. Good scoring, good assists. Not amazing on the defensive end, but finding a field goal anchor this late of somebody who can put up over 12 points per game. That's something that you love to find here. So Aaron Gordon's always just a very useful veteran in the right build to have. So a nice mix of youth and veterans on this 3 turns for me.
An anchor, to be clear, is you're helping keep those stats high. Like you're relying on that stats, they're setting you home, not like they're sinking you down. Because when you said free throw anchor with Aaron Gordon, I'm like, I mean, yeah, he's not good, but he's not going to completely sink that category. Yeah, anchor is normally holding down those stats.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, let's shift to the last 3 rounds here, round 16, 17, and 18. Let's see. Okay. Braxton, you started with Tobias Harris at 185. Then at pick 200 went with Bruce Brown, who you called not the backup point guard in Denver earlier.
He's a power forward. That's why.
Power forward. And then at your last pick, at pick 209, you went with Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, some really interesting picks in this range. Tobias, again, self-explanatory. I mean, I usually in this range, you're taking those flyers, right? But because I did that earlier in the draft, I had those elite rookies. I'm reaping the benefits of people taking those flyers at this point in the draft, right? So Tobias is not a world beater, but he's got some production that I'm going to have easily for another 1 or 2 years. Bruce Brown, that's just a fan favorite. I mean, I love him. Gotta get as much Bruce Brown shares as I can, especially in a league this size with this many players drafted, I should say. And then Lonzo, and I believe we drafted before the Max Strus injury. I think he would have gone a little bit higher if Strus got hurt at this point, but was kind of banking on Lonzo taking that Ty Jerome role, which he will, but I think he might see an even more elevated role at this point with Strus going down for a number of months. So again, that's just that production late in the draft that it's just hard to find. And I'm surprised more people didn't try to capitalize on it, especially seeing some of the picks here.
I think as you said, because you took those flyers earlier, it just allowed you then to pound the veteran talent and that productive talent that fell through the crack. And I don't want to say fall through the cracks. That seems like that. I think they are good values, but it just depends on the ordering, like the sequencing here, right? So, I took some of my productive players or flyer types earlier, so I took some more productive players now, or vice versa. I think we see that with Andrew's pick here. Pick 184, Dennis Schroeder. That's a more veteran producer type. Then Andrew's next two picks, 201, Peyton Watson, and then 208, Maxime Reynaud. Two more flyer types there at the end that, if they don't show something, maybe you cycle through them. But if they show something, then you have those flyer types at the end of your draft. Andrew, is that kind of your thinking here with your last three selections?
Yeah, so I knew I had one more minor spot to work with. So let's address the veteran first. If I'm in a dynasty startup, right when I get out of that 180 range, this has been a rinse repeat thing that I've done in multiple leagues, which is grabbing Dennis Schroeder right when I get outside of that 180 range. People consider him like outside the 200s or something like that. I think that's underrating him quite a bit. I know we're not getting the Germany version of Dennis Schroeder here, but I still really like the output that he can provide for somebody where you don't really need to spend a high pick to get him, or even in trades, people are probably not going to ask that much for Dennis Schroeder's services. So I do like the role and opportunity for him in Sacramento this year. This is just another way to stat pad my points and assists. So that was a solid veteran to get right there. Then with my next two picks, so again, keeping in mind that I had a minor spot left to use, I did want to use Johan Behringer as a stash, but your colleague, Mark Aaron Brewski, grabbed him at the beginning of round 17. So I went with Peyton Watson. Peyton Watson is somebody whose role is starting to flourish a bit more for Denver, and he generally does have guard eligibility, and somebody like him is very unique where he would generally have guard eligibility but produces over 1 block per game. He's at 1.4 blocks per game, which is a very unique kind of tool to have. You're not really having him for much other reason besides defense. So let's say there's a matchup where I really need to be competitive in blocks. Maybe I'm playing against Braxton's team, and I don't need assists anymore. I don't need guard stats anymore. I need to really stat pad my blocks and my big man stats. When Watson probably does get his guard eligibility back from Fantrax, I can sit one of my guards and slot Watson into that spot while still having a heavy rotation and presence of forwards and centers within the lineup. So he's just a very versatile tool in that regard due to the unique stats that he can provide for a position that you don't usually see it at. And then since I took Peyton Watson here, I was saving my last spot for a stash pick and then got headshot sniped by Zach from Dizzle Dynasty. He took Deron Holmes, who I really wanted. So at that point, I said, all right, it's my last pick of the draft. I'll just take somebody I'm super high on, which is Maxime Reynaud. So this is definitely a planned stash pick. I do think he is going to find some minutes this year in Sacramento. But, he is a second rounder. So we'll need to see give him a little bit of time to really get going here. So he has all the time he needs sitting in my minor spot as a stash alongside Noah Senge. So I got 2 French rookies in the stash spots there, as well as just, a good bench with some other youth in there to complement the starting 10 that I went with.
I mean, I didn't know you were that much of a fan of Maxime Reynaud. That is news to me. No, if you have listened to Andrew on previous podcasts, he very much loves Reynaud for his, I think, varied skill set from that center spot, which I agree. There's definitely is fantasy potential there if he does see minutes. All right, let's get to some of your all's final spots here, and I'll show each of y'all's roster. Braxton, we'll start with you. You have a lot of these productive veterans towards the end, but I would generally say this is a more, rookie-oriented draft, going rookie or youth-oriented draft, going Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple early. Do you think I'm being fair to your roster there, or do you think you can still look to compete this year?
I feel like, and this might sound stupid, if I took those guys out of that starting lineup and moved them into the minor slots and like took the bottom of the bench, this team would look a lot better in terms of production now. I think there is that production there and has the ability to win literally this league. I know this is just a mock, but I'm so confident in how this team has been built and crafted around my top 2 players that I think that I'm set up to, if not win the first year, at least be super competitive. And then because of those guys that I drafted, continue that upward trajectory of improvement, assuming, at least 3 of those guys pay off into useful fantasy assets, which I think is pretty reasonable. So it maybe youth heavy on paper, but I think I supplemented it with production in a way that really just is a luxury. I'm really happy with it, and definitely not a tanking team. I don't tank, and it's not an all-in competitive team either because I don't do that either. So I think it turned out really well.
I think that's fair. I mean, you look at some of those pillars. We mentioned Jalen Williams and Scotty Barnes at the top, both 24. Kellen Harper should still be productive, 19. Then Christian Braun, 24. Jared Allen's 27. Keyshawn George, 21, is producing now well. Daniel Gafford, 26. And then just littered throughout, you got some good veteran players. Miles Turner, not old, but 29, but right in that prime. Steph Curry, obviously a top player, even though he's 37, a top player. And then just other veteran talents littered throughout. I think that's fair. Or if you needed to sell off Curry for just a slight, I'll call it a retool, won't call it a rebuild. But if you needed to go in that direction, I think you could easily find value for lots of these players and then just really reload for next season pretty quickly. Andrew, we'll go over to your team now. And we can kind of get a picture of what you were building with that Giannis-focused build. You have Giannis, Anthony Davis, Karl-Anthony Towns, Tumani Kamara chipping in some of the defensive stats, Mark Williams for those boards, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane helping supplement some boards, assists, steals, and a little bit of blocks even. Were you happy with how this build turned out, going with Giannis early and building from there?
Very happy because, for my starting 10 here, none of these guys are stash picks that I need to wait a year or 2 on, but there is still plenty of youth here. Mark Williams is 23, Jaden Ivey is 23, Bilal Coulibaly is 21, and Jalen Suggs is 24. So a good mix of this kind of age window I'm mostly interested in, which is like 27 to 32. I don't think I have anybody above 32 on this squad. And then some guys, below the age of 25 as well too. So I went with that focus and with that kind of blend of both youth and competitiveness. There's even still a blend of that you see on the bench too. Dennis Schroeder, who's one of my more older vets, but then there's Anthony Simon, Santi Aldama, both under 27 years old. Aaron Gordon's another vet. And then back to youth again with Peyton Watson at 23 years old and Yves Misi with 21 years old. So I think everything makes sense here for the build that I was going for. I think it'll be heavy on volume, points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. There'll be some weeks where I'm good at field goal percentage. There'll be some weeks where I'm good at free throw percentage. I think there's still definitely some room to work with on the three-pointer side as well. Karl-Anthony Towns, Bane, Poole, Suggs, Anthony Simon, Santi Aldama. I really like the diversity that I have going here and would have definitely been excited to work with this team long-term. Absolutely.
Now, I think what's funny is that I characterize this as a more older in the prime team, but you mentioned all those ages, and I was looking through it now. Giannis is your second oldest player at 30. So even though it seemed like, you went Giannis, Towns, Davis with your first 3 picks, ages 30, 29, 32 respectively, you actually managed to inject a lot of youth throughout the rest of the draft. And I think in a way that made sense. So, looking at that full picture, I think that actually worked really well in your favor. Looking at that summary. Well, I think that is a good stopping point for this pod, going on close to an hour and a half here. But a lot of players we discussed here. I mean, what was at least 36? You tack on extras, 40 basically player profiles in Dynasty, getting an idea of where they should be drafted and their outlooks. I think this is great content to y'all listeners out there. Andrew, Braxton, is there anything y'all want to shout out? I know y'all mentioned some of the Patreon outlooks and player profiles you've done. Y'all mentioned updated rankings. what do y'all got going on over at Angle Fantasy Basketball as we head into the NBA season?
So our current Dynasty rank update from last month is live on our Patreon right now. So if, thank you for any supporters that we have right now. And if you're interested in that, as well as bonus content that we provide, go check that out. But we, of course, do a ton of free content as well. Our YouTube channel, Angle Fantasy Basketball, has all of our podcast videos that we do. We're on Spotify and Apple as well. And then we do have a free Dynasty rank update coming up as well, too. So our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com, that's where all of our free content is. So keep an eye on that, especially close to tip-off of the NBA season. That's where you'll find our rank update for the public once that drops. And then we're on Twitter and Blue Sky at Angle Fantasy BB. Thank you for having us on, Mark.
Thanks for coming on. Great content. Make sure you go follow them. I know I do, and I follow their content. They put out some great stuff. Links to their site will be in the show notes, both on YouTube and on audio. And if you're on YouTube again, make sure you hit that like button. If you're on audio, subscribe, rate, review. Once again, that stuff will really help the growth of the pod. It would be much appreciated. But until then, we will see you next time on the Pun Intended podcast. Thanks for coming on, you guys.
Thanks, Mark.